Welcome. Let's start with the top story that we are tracking for you. The government of India has come down heavily on the microblogging platform Twitter. The Indian government had asked Twitter to block nearly 250 accounts over allegedly using a controversial hashtag on Monday. The authorities had asked the social media company to block access to prevent escalation of violence. Those 250 accounts and posts talked about farmer genocide. The Ministry of Electronics and IT had ordered for a blocking under Section 69A of the IT Act. Now, as per the communications sent, Twitter chose not to comply with the same, and the offending handles and hashtags were blocked only for a few minutes. Twitter had previously withheld these accounts under its policy called Country Withheld Content Policy. In a subsequent meeting with officials, the social media company had conveyed that the accounts and tweets were unwithheld as it constitutes free speech. The 18-page government notice stated that the impracticability or the disproportionality cannot be decided by Twitter, which is an intermediary bound by the orders of the central government. Now, the notice states that the direction to block hashtags on genocide has been found to be instigating people to commit offences in relation to the public order and security of the state. The accounts that were suspended include those of Kisan Ekta Morcha and Bharatiya Kisan Union, the Caravan magazine, Prasar Bharati CEO Sahi Sekhar Vempati, Aam Aadmi Party, MLA Jarnail Singh, CPIM leader Mohd Salim, and activist Hansraj Mehta. Now, for more on this, we are being joined by our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sabal. Siddhant, good evening to you. Now, take us through the details here. The Indian government has asked Twitter to block certain handles, which Twitter then did for a short while, and then unblocked them, citing freedom of speech. What actions will the Indian government pursue now?
Well, Alison, it looks like a battle of sorts between Twitter and the Indian government. Now, remember, Twitter is a private company, and the Indian government on 31st of January had sent an order. This was on the request of the Indian Home Ministry, which cited certain Twitter handles which were trying to incite the current situation using a specific hashtag that was related to genocide. So the Indian government had the issue regarding the use of word genocide, and that perhaps inciting the situation amidst the farmers' protest. And the Home Ministry asked the Indian IT Ministry, and then the IT Ministry under Section 69A of the Indian IT Act passed an order. It was around 3 p.m. on that day, asking Twitter to act on these accounts. So number of accounts were withheld, and also certain hashtags were acted on. But later, Twitter revoked or removed the entire block, and now these accounts are back. So now the Indian government has sent a second notice asking Twitter to comply with the 31st order or face action, because remember, under Section 69A of the Indian IT Act, there can be certain penal provisions, and these penal provisions can, of course, impact Twitter's working here in India. So what next is something that everyone will be waiting for. In fact, WION has reached out to the Twitter spokesperson on the recent development on the non-compliance of the order, and Twitter said that they have no comments on the development. But largely, it is a part of a global debate which is shaping that can private big tech companies have the power to impact the situation on the ground. They already have a power, but is it necessary for them to follow the government orders? We know this entire debate started with Twitter and, of course, other social media platforms banning the account of the former US President Donald Trump, and then now this debate has started in India. So it is clearly between a big tech company and the Indian government amid the protests which are happening on the borders of Delhi, and the Indian government sees the entire situation being incited by using this specific hashtag which is trending. In fact, let me tell you that on 26th of January, when we saw the massive vandalization in India's national capital, Delhi, even the protesters reaching the Red Fort, on that day, Twitter acted on approximately 300 Twitter accounts, and also these specific hashtags were not allowed to trend in the trending section so that it does not incite the situation. So this is the second time the entire development is happening.
Right, Siddhant. Now, you have touched on it. Those 250 accounts and posts talked about farmer genocide, and the government felt that this was inciting violence. But Twitter removed the total block, we can't help but compare this to what happened in the USA, where Donald Trump was blocked, as an example, for inciting violence. Could this be taken as like double standards by Twitter?
Well, what the Indian government is primarily telling Twitter, it has quoted a number of the judgments of the Indian Supreme Court. They are saying that freedom of speech, which of course is enshrined in the Indian Constitution, is not complete. It has certain restrictions, and these restrictions are necessary so that public law and order can be maintained. So this is something that the Indian government has highlighted, and of course this is a kind of a larger debate which we have seen a number of times, whether it's Keshwananda Bharati versus Union of Government judgment, the basic structure of the Constitution. So a larger debate where the freedom of expression and freedom of speech stops and where the restrictions by the Indian government begin. So this is something that has been an ongoing discussion in the Indian constitutional schemes. But now the entire situation has turned, because the entire freedom of expression now comes under the domain of social media platforms such as Twitter, such as Facebook. So is it justified that these accounts need to be backed or not? This is something that the Indian government is telling the Twitter, the social media companies, and of course Twitter, saying that some of these accounts need to be banned, or under the garb of freedom of expression they can incite the mob, and that can be that can lead to a violence which we saw on 26th of January in India's national capital, Delhi.
Right, Siddhant, thank you very much for bringing us all the details there.